This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area. Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
Quiet on the set. Soon we will all be more informed.
We appreciate learning more of our region's news and public affairs. Cameras rolling.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, incidents of motorcycle gangs performing stunts and endangering traffic were investigated by the police recently and led to some arrests. Unique to the situation was that the police action was the first high-profile example of Troop Nola, the state police's contribution to fighting local crime. The troopers won. Two big buildings were also in the news this week. One is a 1,000-room so-called headquarters hotel to be built near the convention center, and the other is the Dome, which will be the site of another Superbowl. But there are issues of support payments for restoration facing a third and long situation. Elsewhere, we will hear the latest on the restraining order against a photographer filed by Mayor Cantrell. And with the hurricane season approaching, we will look at the concept of fortified roofs. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Tony McCauley, staff writer, The Times-Picayune, The New Orleans Advocate, Brandon Walker, news anchor and reporter, WWL Louisiana, and John Zimmerman, staff writer, The Times-Picayune, The New Orleans Advocate. And we're going to stay with John because Troop Nola made some sort of high-profile arrests of these, ATV and motorbike riders who do wheelies, et cetera, in the middle of traffic. But they had to go to St. James Parish to arrest them.
Yes, indeed. And Governor Landry announced these arrests along with state police leaders at a news conference in Baton Rouge to announce the 3 arrests of people in St. James Parish for an investigation that was conducted by Troop Nola, which is Landry's campaign pledge to increase policing, state policing in the city and dedicate a troop to the city. That itself is coming along slowly. The superintendent of the state police announced at the same time it may be till the end of the year before that troop is fully filled out. But they wanted to announce this first big arrest, which was a concern of people have in New Orleans, of these sideshows and dirt bikes and ATVs rolling around.
We have a little bit of video, too. So while John is describing this to us, let's take a look at the video to see what he's talking about, because I'm sure a lot of people out there have experienced this and seeing these these guys on their motorbikes. It's amazing what they do.
And according to police, they're organized a lot from outside, people coming into the city doing this. So the investigation was mostly via social media and basically finding out, who these people are that are advertising themselves online. They did search warrants of these guys' houses, not in New Orleans, and found a bunch of stolen dirt bikes, according to state police. And so we'll see what happens with the arrest. These cases are going to be handled in, right now, St. James Parish, so it's not going to be in Orleans Parish.
Oh, really?
So the crimes that they're alleging right now that are charged are conspiracy and are, in planning these things out.
And so, like you say, they followed up social media and found these people. Are they organizers of a group that will do this? And we should say that this video was actually shot last year. This was
May
an incident last
23
year.
are the cases involved in this one that state police was looking at. But yeah, they are organizing on social media, and they're going into the city, in some cases, according to state police, and filming there, and they sort of made connections between what was on social media in the organizing and what they saw on the streets on these incidents in May 23.
And it's a whole gang of people. It's a lot of riders out there.
It can be a lot, and they can really occupy a whole intersection. And I've seen in some instances where it's hard for police even to get through to deal with the situation. So what state police says is that they did a lot of community outreach and found that this was one area where was one of the most common concerns or areas that they could address. Now, this is not the kind of nonviolent of violent crime that Landry has been, talking about addressing, and not just in New Orleans, but in Baton Rouge and Shreveport as well. So, in terms of, it's sort of low-hanging fruit for what this troop Nola wants to be, according to the people.
Which was a surprise then from the public relations perspective, right? You announced that there is going to be this big troop to oversee the crackdown on big violent offenses, and New Orleans particular, and the first big announcement of arrests are not here.
And they're not, and right now in New Orleans, and that may go to the staffing issue, really.
Sure.
Robert Hodges, the commander, says, look, they have staffing issues across state police. And to get this troop to the level, originally I had heard it was going to be April, May that this troop would kind of be fully rolled out. That's taking a lot longer. And he's talking, they're talking now end of year, toward the Super Bowl. I mean, that's always kind of the target, seems like, for a lot of stuff. But
so what do you think was the point of this announcement then, just to show that the troop is working?
Correct, yeah. It's to show that they are doing something.
Okay.
What I understand is a lot of these troopers are doing now is backing up the NOPD's violent crime task force on some things. But, they want to show that they're doing some investigating, that they're building cases. Eventually, some of those cases are going to get charged in Orleans Parish, and then we'll see what happens with this agreement between Jason Williams, the DA here, and the Attorney General, Liz Murill, who was also at the news conference, how they're going to work it out, because the state police cases, she can charge.
Right.
But to see how far this issue has gone, if you remember under Mike Foster when he was governor, a big issue was about wearing helmets or not. And Mike Foster, who was the motorcycle rider, was opposed to helmets, and so that was a big issue. And now the big issue is these guys doing acrobats in groups along the interstate.
Yeah, I mean, there were some dates last year, I believe, that it got out of hand in several parts of the city. But again, this is a third-class felonies we're talking about here. But it's an interesting charge. It's aggravated obstruction of a highway of commerce, which is a top sentence of 15 years. It's a peculiar charge to Louisiana.
So it's a major charge, but we're not going to see how that's going to work out with D.A. Williams because he's not going to be involved in it?
Well, Leon Canizero, the former DA, who's now Liz Murrill's second in command as the criminal division chief, has said there may be more, this investigation may result in more charges that do get charged in Orleans Parish. But
right now they're going to be adjudicated in St. James?
Tuesday are St. James Parish charges.
All right. Okay.
And they're 21 to 27 years old. They're young men doing this, allegedly.
Why are they doing that? It looks so dangerous, and not just to folks around them, but to themselves as well. Okay. All right, John. Thanks a lot. Tony, we're going to go over to you because it looks like, at least we're hearing talk about a really big hotel coming downtown, 1,000 rooms.
Yeah, that would make it about the third largest hotel after the Sheraton and the Riverside Hilton, I believe. But I mean, the significance of this one is it's, as you mentioned earlier, it's the headquarters hotel for the convention center. It's been something that's been talked about for a decade or thereabouts. And the CEO of the convention center, Michael Sawaya, who started the job in 2008, had this as his top priority because they say that around the country, all of the competitors that we have in Nashville and Austin and wherever, all have at least one headquarters hotel, which is a major factor when they're trying to win certain type of business. Certain type of business insists on having a hotel which is classified as headquarters hotel, which is essentially attached to or adjacent to the convention center. So
this was not his original wish,
right?
Correct. I mean, it sort of started a few years ago. This has really been out there in the discussion, but this is not going to occupy the place where he wanted it to be.
That's right. This is a key sort of part of that broader billion-dollar river district that's getting underway. And the plan for this hotel was always at the upriver end of the convention center, with the rationale that they needed it up there because people were reluctant to book those further halls because there wasn't much going on up there. But it's ended up being a kind of a chicken and egg situation. The partner that they have in this hotel, which has been the partner that they've talked to all along over the years that they've had various proposals, is Omni Hotels and Resorts from Dallas. And they basically just balked at the idea of going up there and being the kind of pioneer of that end of the convention center. They wanted to wait and see if some of these river district projects that they've been talking about actually get further along before they would commit to anything like that. So they haven't committed to that. They've instead opted for a plot of land that's much further closer to town. Excuse me. It's down at Andrew Higgins Boulevard and Convention Center Boulevard. Currently, the Sugar Mill event space, owned by John Cummings. So one of the aspects of the deal is that the state, the convention center, state-owned convention center, is going to have to pony up $20 million thereabouts to buy that plot of land for the hotel. And then they're going to have to come up with a further $70 million of equity investment by the state into this project, which is a new aspect of this. That, together with all of the tax subsidies that they will require to finance this, could be the point of contention as they work out the details of this over the next several months.
And there are a lot of details yet to work out, including the design.
The design, we were talking earlier about whether or not it will physically be attached to the hotel. It's on the other side of Convention Center Boulevard. Will they build a sky bridge? Will that be part of the design? Or will people be walking across that thoroughfare there? So yeah, there's a lot of big questions still to be asked, which they are going to spend the next several months hammering out.
But it looks like this has a better chance of coming to fruition than some other ideas in the past.
Yeah, this has a lot of backing from key figures. It's got Governor Landry came out immediately and congratulated everyone involved, so it has his backing. He recently appointed Convention Center chairman, one of his major donors, a Texan called Russ Allen. Sorry. And he was very much behind it. The tourism board here, Walt Leger's, was behind it. And was along to congratulate everybody on the day. So it's got a lot of momentum. Previous iterations of it had a different kind of subsidy set up, which was heavily criticized by BGR, the government watchdog, and it also was launched right when the pandemic hit, so that was shelved. And this is a scaled back version of it anyway.
And is there an attempt to also name this area part of the River District?
Yeah, so there is legislation actually with the state legislature currently to expand the district to cover this, so that it would be eligible for the different types of subsidies that you get there, and that's part of a redrawing of the entire map, by the way, of the district to expand it considerably outside the convention center land to private-owned land, which is an interesting aspect.
And so, I mean, timeline on this, if it happens, when do they expect it to be built?
They're hoping to have all the documents, all of the stuff we were talking about, hammered out by the end of the year, and then it'll be a 30-month build program.
Okey-doke. All right, Tony, thanks a lot. Okay, Brandon, over to you, because you keep looking into insurance, homeowners insurance, and now fortified roofs.
It keeps me busy.
Specifically, it's certainly, and it's something that people are really very interested in. So. Just a couple of different points about the fortified roofs. One thing that really, jumped out at me, I didn't realize it, is the evaluation process. You had to about that.
Right. So, and that starts first. So, yes, technically there are a list of specifications that would qualify your roof to be fortified. But in order to qualify for the Fortified Home Grant Program, and also to qualify for any potential rate reduction, what you have to do is contact a state-approved evaluator. That person comes out, looks at your home first to see if it qualifies for fortified, and then from there you go through the process. And that person's with you throughout the step of the way, too, looking at the work that's being done.
So, I mean, it really, the income level is one thing if you want to get assistance with this fortified roof, and if you act quick enough, because there's not a lot of money in there.
Not a lot of money in there.
But,
also, $10,000 doesn't cover it all.
It's your house.
Right, it is your house too.
I don't think people are really quite aware of that.
Sure. So one of the first things they do is they look at the height between so the mean height between the ground to the ceiling of to the roof there, to see the height there. A couple other things inside the house, the shaft, before they say that they can go in and put in, for instance, stronger decking, and then follow the nail pattern and all the other things with the shingles that Fortified requires.
So the idea of this fortified roof, one thing is to protect your house and make it, stand up to a storm better. But also a big element of this is reducing your insurance premium. Are we seeing that it is?
Yeah, that's the hope at least. It depends on who you ask. Overall, no, we're not seeing any substantial decreases in policies. In fact, we spoke to people who say that they either qualified for fortified homes the first time around, the first round, so they were under coverage for Louisiana citizens, were able to get the grant to help them subsidize some of the cost, and they are still waiting to see if they're going to get any rate reduction from the insurer, or they're really not seeing that much of a rate reduction. So it's a crapshoot. It depends depends on the insurance company.
Is the state requiring the insurance companies?
No. Now, that's interesting. So part 2 of our reporting took a look at some of the legislative efforts to change that. Now, there was Senate Bill 484. It's still on the table right now. The initial version of Senate Bill 484 did have a provision that would have required insurers to give a rate reduction at least 20 to 30%. That's in line with the program in Alabama, which Fortified Homes is modeled after here for the record. That didn't make it out of the bill that ultimately was passed by the Senate. Now in committee in the House is a version of the bill that no longer has the minimum discount, but also they're looking at some other changes to what can be required in terms of data that is accessible to people to see actually what are the going rates for reductions, because people just don't know what they're getting into.
Right. So if somebody does the fortified roof, can they then, you know, after the fact, go to the state and say, hey, help me out with this?
No.
Or it has to be done beforehand?
No, it has to be done beforehand, and that's why you get those evaluators in line. You go through that process first, and the insurance department is with you through that.
How much money is there the state has, and, you know, how big is the pot?
So the initial pot was $20 million. They have $5 million left over. Interestingly, a lot of that is in part due to people who applied for the program, they got the grant money, but their homes didn't necessarily qualify for building code issues, antiquated building code specifications, et cetera. So you've got more money that they did put into it, plus that surplus. But honestly, $25 million really not enough to go around. Interestingly, looking at what other states have done, Florida in its previous legislative session, they allocated another $200 million into a similar program. Now, asking Louisiana lawmakers to come with $200 million here, that's a big ask,
right.
But I mean, it's also a big differential, $20 million on one hand, $200 on the other.
So our new insurance commissioner, his insurance, I mean, the legislation that he proposed, did it all get through?
Right. So yeah. So Governor Landry did sign 4 bills this month into law that were being supported by Temple. One, a repeal of the 3-year rule. Another, doing away with the so-called bad agent law. A couple others there, and it's it's designed to be friendly to the insurers, which is in line with Temple's argument that essentially if you build it, they will come.
Are they?
So it depends on who you ask there. So you talk to some brokers and they're saying that they're seeing some easement depending on where you are. But as we know, when you talk about insurance, particularly in Louisiana, but insurance in general, data collection is really hard by which to come. So you're seeing some easement depending on where you look, but you're not seeing people come here in droves just yet.
So a lot of questions still out there about it.
A lot of questions still, yeah. And it's a question as to whether what we do have on the books and what they're working to strengthen, including 484, whether it will be strong enough when it passes to actually do something to help people get their roofs fixed.
But then that is the reduction,
right.
The insurance premium reduction. All right, Brandon, a lot of information there. Thanks a lot. E, over to you. A little bit of a dispute between the Saints and the Superdome Commission.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit shocking to people at home who are feeling comfortable. I mean, if there are 3 beloved institutions in New Orleans, it's the Superdome, the Saints, and Gail Benson, and to find them possibly at odds with each other. And it all came up at a meeting of the Superdome Commission, the Louisiana Stadium and Exposition District, their commission, where somebody mentioned that they're talking about the progress and the work, the renovation work going on in the Dome based on a 2019 agreement. And someone said, well, the Saints have kind of fallen short and in terms of what they owe. And that, of course, caused a big stir and people going back and forth and wondering what happened. And the Saints were issuing statements, and people were wondering if there's something bad in the Saints organization. The Saints issued a statement saying, well, we're not aware of what they were talking about exactly. And essentially, it's a very, very complicated issue. But what it is part of the agreement that the Saints are putting up something like $150 million, $450 million project. But there's other elements to it, like who gets to do what, who gets to control what, and all that. For example, it was in a previous agreement that the Saints got the naming rights for the Superdome. That wasn't in the original arrangement between the state. But eventually, they win things, and the Saints implied that they haven't gotten answers to all these extra agreements. I'm going to ask Tony to comment on that a little bit too. But today, Dennis Lauscher, who's the president of the Saints and the Pelicans, issued a Q&A today addressing some of the issues. The interview was done by a Saints and staff member, right? Okay. And so he knew which questions to ask. But I think that there were questions that people wanted to know the answers to anyway. One of the questions says that the media took every advantage to characterize Mrs. Benson and the Saints as either not having the money to complete the payments or simply delinquent with the deal. So the question, does Mrs. Benson have the money? And Dennis Lasha took offense to the question. He says, look, we absolutely have the money to pay. In fact, we've already paid $144.7 million. For anyone at the LSAD or media member to suggest otherwise is extremely offensive, unfounded, and insulting to Mrs. Benson, who gives so much to the community.
And then you see Tony smiling over here. And by the way, we're not going to be able to have all of this because we're running out of time, but that's on the website. But you know, the media, you were smiling about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think whenever the media is evoked as the culprit in something, you know, you have to kind of ask a question. So there's a lot of back and forth about what documentation people had and all this kind of stuff. The question is, why are they late with payments? And some of the board members have said privately, well, it's hardball negotiation. I think you were alluding to that, about the deal that the Saints is hammering out right now. Supposedly, we haven't seen a copy of it yet, but supposedly the new agreement contains all kinds of demands about you know, what the Saints' revenue share will be of some of the executive suites and events that are not Saints events and all that kind of stuff. So that makes sense that they would be withholding the payments here or late with the payments at this crucial time for renovating the stadium because they're playing hardball. Right. And they also, another thing in it that makes sense to my ear is that also with the state, they've got negotiations coming up on Benson Tower where there's some lease agreements that are expiring quite soon. So it's just business negotiations. Could be the answer. Not the media shenanigans.
At the end of the interview, Lasha points out that Tuesday night, Governor Landry called Gail Benson. They had a long conversation. He says it all went well, and that he's optimistic that it's going to be worked out.
Thursday night, yeah.
He said it was a wonderful conversation. So.
The conversation was Thursday night, right, between the two of them. So they're getting along. Everything's fine, and the Saints say that they have the money to pay, but basically you're saying it's negotiation.
You can't imagine this is going to end.
Well, if they're having wonderful conversations, I guess the media can be thanked for that.
You can't imagine this going to end with the Superdome saying, okay, Saints, you can't play here anymore. You know? I don't think it's going to go that way. So.
Yeah. It's not the first time these things have happened.
Yeah. Right, okay, all right, E. and Tony, thanks a lot. John, we're going to wrap it up with you because the mayor has gotten a TRO against a citizen who she says is stalking her.
Yes, indeed, a legal adversary and a French Quarter resident and real estate broker by the name of Anne Bro. The mayor filed a petition for a temporary restraining order, and it was issued on May 10th. That's temporary. That's 10 days. There was supposed to be a hearing last week or this week that got pushed back, but it looks like it's on. Anne Bro is saying that the mayor's allegations are false regarding her alleged stalking. You know, she claims that she's on her balcony, that her family is, you know, taken up residence in for 30 years and was
in the French Quarter and the Pontalba
in the
balcony.
French Quarter. And
I think we have the picture that sort of started this whole thing is in allegedly Anne Bro took this picture of, and this was the mayor.
And she doesn't deny
and
taking
Jeffrey,
that picture.
Yeah, that was taken April 7th.
Correct. Went on to the Metropolitan Crime Commission, which filed a complaint with New Orleans Police Department's Public Integrity Bureau, questioning why Jeffrey Vappy, the security detail officer, or one of them for the mayor,
at that time, he's no longer on the security detail. Well,
He's off of that for now,
yeah.
pending investigation into the MCC's complaint.
And so this kind of spurred the complaint by Mayor Cantrell, seeking the TRO against this woman, Anne Bro, who did take that picture, but she lives right across the street, literally,
right.
you know, balcony to balcony.
And the allegation from the mayor is broader than that, in that she stalked and provided video to media for all of the stories that have come out, starting with Fox, regarding, you know, that relationship.
Well, of course, Fox 8 denies getting any media, any video from.
Yeah, my understanding is their videos from the French Market Corporation, public cameras that are in the Jackson Square, and that's where that video came from. Mrs. Bro also contests some of the other allegations just of stalking, that she's, you know, creating a safety issue for the mayor, says that this is her balcony. This is the most public of spaces in the city, and everybody looks up at the balconies.
And that was a public balcony.
Right, that's what I was going to say. It seems hard to prove that one person is responsible for a ton of pictures and video taken from the public space. I mean, that could have been anyone.
And that's not in the mayor's TRO petition yet. You know, they're going to argue this out in mid-June when they do get to court, where the mayor, at the moment anyway, is going to be looking for a more durable protective order that can last up to 18 months. The order that's in place now bars Ms. Bro from being around City Hall. 100, I believe 100 yards within City Hall, 100 yards within the mayor's home in Broadmoor, and 100 yards of the mayor's daughter's school.
Okay. So mid-June is a hearing on the TRO either being thrown out or extended? Is that
correct? It can be up to 18 months. I think that's at the judge's discretion. The judge is Civil District Court Judge Bernadette D'Souza.
Okay, we'll see what happens there. Thanks, John. Other stories, Ian, over to you.
We're getting toward the end of the legislature, and there are a few having to dealing with protesters. And one that seems that's on its way to the governor's desk is one that prohibits protesters from getting within 25 feet of the police if the police tell them not to do that. And so they're going to have that kind of protection. And there are a few others that are coming that might come into law. So.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Ian. Tony, over to you.
We've had some bad news about New Orleans East that we've been reporting recently, but I got a story coming on Monday, I think, about some new investments going in there. One big one by Troy Henry, other than the Bayou Phoenix project that he's working on, and a potential new plan for reviving that old Lake Tower Plaza there.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tony. Okay, Brandon, over to you.
Yeah, sure. We're looking at the most aggressive forecast for hurricane season ever, with 17 to 25 named storms potentially. So talking about insurance and people trying to shore up their homes, here we go yet again.
Yeah, here we go. Oh, didn't want to hear that. All right. Thanks, Brandon.
Well, if you hear a federal judge talk about it and the monitors that monitor reforms to the New Orleans Police Department, we're going to hear a lot of talk about a sustainment period and a ramp down and coming off of that consent decree beginning in a few weeks. They're at the last big hurdle, which is called bias-free policing. It's a very, it covers a lot of ground when you talk about bias on the streets and arrests, but that is the last one, and the judge and the monitors sound pretty optimistic that they're going to be, we're going to start hearing about a time frame.
All right, interesting. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good, safe Memorial Day.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
Public television is our passion. With so much content that WYES broadcasts and presents online, we are quite entertained and highly informed.
Please join us in supporting WYES.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.